A beggar went to the pharmacy with his daughter in his arms. The manager called the police accusing him of stealing, but what the police officer said upon observing the situation left everyone speechless. The door to Thompson's pharmacy creaked open, a sound barely audible over the gentle hum of the air conditioning. The soft chime of the bell above the door drew the eyes of the few customers browsing the aisles, but their attention quickly shifted back to their own concerns. It wasn't unusual for someone to enter quietly. What was unusual was the man who entered this time. Mark, a beggar by circumstance rather than choice, stood hesitantly in the doorway, his clothes tattered and worn from countless nights spent sleeping rough. In his arms, he cradled his daughter, Lily, a fragile girl of 6, her small frame wrapped in a thin blanket. Her cheeks were flushed with fever, and she whimpered softly, a sound that tore at Mark's heart. He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the judgmental looks he knew he would receive. The pharmacy was brightly lit, the white shelves stocked with an array of medicines and health products that seemed worlds away from his current reality. Mark's eyes darted around until they landed on the counter, where Mr. Thompson, the manager, was meticulously arranging bottles of cough syrup. Mark approached slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. He could feel Mr. Thompson's eyes on him, a mixture of suspicion and disdain evident in his gaze. As Mark reached the counter, he shifted Lily in his arms, her head lolling weakly against his shoulder. "Excuse me, sir," Mark began, his voice rough and hesitant. "My daughter, she's very sick. I don't have much, but I need some medicine for her fever. Please, anything you can spare." Mr. Thompson's expression hardened. He had seen Mark around town, always in the same worn-out clothes, always with the same desperate look. To him, Mark represented everything he disdained: laziness, poverty, failure. "Look, I don't run a charity here," Mr. Thompson replied coldly. "If you don't have money, I can't help you." Mark's shoulders slumped. He knew it would be a long shot, but hearing the outright refusal still stung. "Please," he pleaded, "I'm not asking for charity. Just a little bit of medicine. She's burning up. I'll pay you back as soon as I can. I promise." Mr. Thompson shook his head, already turning away to deal with another customer. "I'm sorry, but rules are rules." Feeling the weight of his hopelessness, Mark's grip on Lily tightened. He turned to leave, but a sudden idea made him stop. Maybe, just maybe, he could convince someone else. He looked around, spotting a young woman browsing the aisles. Gathering his courage, he approached her. "Ma'am, I hate to bother you, but my daughter is very sick. Could you help me get some medicine? I don't have enough money, but I can repay you." The woman glanced at him, then at Lily, and her eyes softened. She was about to respond when Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the air. "Hey! Don't harass my customers," he barked, striding over with a frown etched deeply into his features. "I've told you, if you can't pay, you need to leave." Before Mark could protest, Mr. Thompson had already pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. I won't have you causing trouble in my store." Panic flared in Mark's eyes. He hadn't done anything wrong, but the prospect of the police arriving filled him with dread. He knew how things looked: a disheveled man with a sick child, begging for help. It didn't matter that his intentions were pure. Within minutes, the wail of a siren approached, and a police car pulled up outside the pharmacy. Officer Ramirez, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor and sharp eyes, stepped out. He entered the store, taking in the scene quickly: the angry manager, the frightened man holding a feverish child, and the onlookers who had stopped to watch the drama unfold. "What seems to be the problem here?" Officer Ramirez asked, his voice steady but authoritative. Mr. Thompson pointed at Mark. "This man is harassing my customers and causing a disturbance. I think he might be trying to steal something." Mark's eyes widened in shock. "No, I swear. I'm not stealing. I just need medicine for my daughter. She's really sick, and I don't have enough money to buy it." Officer Ramirez turned his attention to Mark, his gaze softening as he took in the sight of Lily. She was clearly unwell, her small body shivering despite the warmth of the store. "All right, let's take this one step at a time," Officer Ramirez said calmly. "Sir, can you show me what you have in your pockets?" Mark nodded nervously, shifting Lily slightly as he fumbled to turn out his pockets. A few coins clinked onto the counter, along with a crumpled photo of a smiling woman, Lily's mother, now gone. There was no sign of any stolen items. Officer Ramirez looked at Mr. Thompson. "I don't see anything here that suggests theft. This man is telling the truth about his situation." Mr. Thompson huffed, unwilling to back down completely. "But he can't pay for the medicine. I have a business to run." Officer Ramirez raised a hand, silencing him. "Sometimes there are more important things than business, Mr. Thompson. This little girl needs help." Turning back to Mark, the officer's expression softened further. "What kind of medicine do you need for your daughter?" Mark swallowed hard, relief mingling with his continued anxiety. "She has a high fever. I need something to bring it down, maybe some fever reducer, and something to keep her hydrated." Officer Ramirez nodded, then addressed Mr. Thompson. "How much would that cost?" The manager, realizing he was cornered, reluctantly named a price. It wasn't much, but for Mark, it might as well have been a fortune. Without a moment's hesitation, Officer Ramirez pulled out his wallet and handed over the money. "Consider this a community service," he said firmly. "And a lesson in compassion." Mr. Thompson, his face reddening, took the money and fetched the medicine. He handed it to Mark without a word, his eyes avoiding contact. Mark, overwhelmed with gratitude, clutched the medicine tightly. "Thank you, officer. Thank you so much. I promise I'll find a way to repay you." Officer Ramirez shook his head. "Just take care of your daughter. That's all the payment I need." As Mark left the pharmacy, Lily still cradled in his arms, the small crowd that had gathered began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Some looked ashamed, others thoughtful. The scene had touched a chord, highlighting the often unseen struggles of those around them. Officer Ramirez watched Mark disappear down the street, a sense of satisfaction settling over him. He knew he had done the right thing. Sometimes, what people needed wasn't punishment or judgment, but a helping hand and a bit of kindness. The cool evening air brushed against Mark's face as he left the pharmacy, a small bag of medicine clutched in his hand. Lily had quieted down, her breathing still ragged but no longer the feverish pant it had been. Mark's heart pounded with a mixture of relief and residual fear. As he walked, he couldn't help but replay the encounter in his mind. "Daddy, are we going home?" Lily's weak voice broke through his thoughts. Mark looked down at her, forcing a smile. "Yes, sweetie. We're going home, and you're going to feel better soon." He made his way to the park where they had been sleeping, a secluded spot behind some thick bushes that offered a modicum of privacy. The city's noise faded into the background, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. Mark laid out a blanket on the ground and gently placed Lily on it, covering her with another blanket to keep her warm. "Here, let's get you some medicine," he said, carefully measuring out the fever reducer. Lily took it without protest, her trust in her father unwavering despite their dire circumstances. As she drifted off to sleep, Mark sat beside her, his mind restless. The day's events had shaken him. He knew people looked down on him, judged him for his appearance and situation, but the outright accusation of theft had stung deeply. He had never stolen a thing in his life, always striving to maintain his dignity despite the hardships. The sound of footsteps approaching made him tense. He looked up to see Officer Ramirez walking towards him, a thoughtful expression on his face. Mark's heart skipped a beat. Was there more trouble? "Officer Ramirez," Mark greeted, his voice wary. The officer raised a hand in a placating gesture. "Easy, Mark. I just wanted to check on you and your daughter. How's she doing?" Mark relaxed slightly. "She's resting now, thanks to the medicine. I can't thank you enough for what you did back there." Officer Ramirez nodded, his eyes softening as he glanced at the sleeping Lily. "Just doing what's right. But I wanted to talk to you about something. Mind if I sit?" Mark shook his head, and the officer lowered himself onto the ground, leaning back against a tree. For a moment, they sat in silence, the night sounds enveloping them. "Mark, do you have any family or friends you can stay with?" Officer Ramirez asked gently. Mark shook his head again, his shoulders slumping. "No. After Lily's mother died, we lost everything. Her family blames me for what happened, and my family, well, they're gone too." The officer sighed, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "I see. It's a tough situation. But you know, there are shelters and organizations that can help. They can provide a safe place for you and Lily, at least temporarily." Mark's face hardened slightly. "I've tried, officer. But the shelters are always full, or they separate families. I can't risk losing her. She's all I have." Officer Ramirez nodded, understanding the fear and determination in Mark's voice. "I get it. But you can't do this alone forever. It's not safe for either of you out here." Mark looked down at his hands, the weight of his struggle pressing heavily on him. "I know. But I don't have any other options right now." Officer Ramirez reached into his pocket and pulled out a card, handing it to Mark. "This is the number for a social worker I know. Her name is Maria. She's helped a lot of people in tough spots. Give her a call. She might be able to find you a place that can keep you together." Mark took the card, the name and number blurring slightly as tears filled his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'll call her tomorrow." The officer stood up, brushing the dirt from his pants. "You do that. And Mark, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. You're not alone in this." As Officer Ramirez walked away, Mark felt a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. He tucked the card safely into his pocket and lay down beside Lily, wrapping his arm around her protectively. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. The next morning, Mark woke early, the city still cloaked in the soft light of dawn. He gently roused Lily, her fever having subsided slightly overnight. After ensuring she had some water and a bit of food, he took out the card Officer Ramirez had given him. With a deep breath, he dialed the number, his hands trembling slightly. The phone rang a few times before a warm, professional voice answered. "Hello, this is Maria. How can I help you?" "Hi, Maria. My name is Mark. Officer Ramirez gave me your number. He said you might be able to help me and my daughter." Maria's tone softened immediately. "Of course, Mark. Why don't you tell me a little more about your situation?" Mark explained everything, his job loss, the death of Lily's mother, their struggles to find stable housing. Maria listened patiently, occasionally asking gentle questions to better understand their needs. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Mark," she said when he finished. "I know it's not easy to talk about. I'm going to do everything I can to help you and Lily. Can you meet me at the community center later today? We can discuss some options and see what resources are available." Mark agreed, feeling a cautious sense of optimism. After hanging up, he prepared Lily for their trip, explaining to her in simple terms that they were going to meet someone who might be able to help them find a better place to stay. As they walked to the community center, Mark couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and hope. He had been let down so many times before, but something about Officer Ramirez's kindness and Maria's understanding gave him a small but significant sense of possibility. When they arrived, Maria greeted them with a warm smile, her presence immediately putting Mark at ease. She led them to a small office, offering Lily a coloring book and some crayons to keep her occupied while they talked. "Mark, I've looked into some options for you," Maria began, her tone both professional and compassionate. "There's a family shelter nearby that has a few openings. They can take you and Lily together. It's a safe place, and they have programs to help you get back on your feet." Mark's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Thank you, Maria. I don't know how to repay you for this. Maria smiled kindly. You don't have to repay me, Mark. Just focus on taking care of Lily and yourself. The shelter staff will work with you to find a more permanent solution. As they made their way to the shelter later that day, Mark felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. It was just a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to hope that things might finally be looking up for him and his beloved daughter. Back at the pharmacy, Mr. Thompson couldn't shake the encounter with Mark and Officer Ramirez from his mind. He replayed the officer's words over and over, feeling a growing sense of shame. He had been so quick to judge, so quick to refuse help. He had let his prejudices cloud his judgment, and it had taken an outsider to remind him of his own humanity. Determined to make amends, Mr. Thompson began to think of ways he could contribute to the community, to ensure that no one else would face the kind of rejection Mark had. It was a small start, but it was a start nonetheless. And as he set about his day, a small part of him hoped that somehow, word would reach Mark that he was truly sorry. The family shelter was a modest brick building nestled between a community center and a small park. Its entrance, flanked by potted plants and a brightly painted sign, exuded a sense of welcome that Mark hadn't felt in a long time. As he and Lily approached, Maria met them at the door, her warm smile offering reassurance. Welcome, Mark. Hi, Lily, Maria greeted, kneeling to Lily's level. How are you feeling today? Lily managed a shy smile, still clutching her father's hand. Better, thank you. Let's get you both settled in, Maria said, standing and guiding them inside. The shelter was clean and well organized, with a communal kitchen, a playroom for children, and a lounge area where a few residents were chatting softly. The atmosphere was calm, almost home-like. Maria led them to a small but cozy room with 2 beds, a dresser, and a window that let in plenty of natural light. This will be your space for now, she explained. We have meals in the dining hall at set times, and there are activities for the kids during the day. If you need anything, just let one of the staff members know. Mark looked around, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Maria. This means so much to us. Maria placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You're welcome, Mark. You and Lily deserve a safe place to stay. Take some time to settle in, and we can talk more about the next steps later. As Maria left, Mark sat on one of the beds, watching Lily explore the room. She seemed more at ease here, her curiosity slowly returning. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of hope. That evening, as the residents gathered for dinner, Mark and Lily found themselves seated with other families, each with their own stories of hardship and resilience. Conversations flowed easily, the shared experience of struggle creating an unspoken bond. Hey, you're new here, right? A woman across the table asked. Her name was Karen, and she had 2 boys who were busily eating their dinner. Mark nodded. Yes, we just arrived today. I'm Mark, and this is my daughter, Lily. Karen smiled warmly. Welcome, Mark. It's good to have you here. This place has been a lifesaver for us. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. As the meal progressed, Mark felt the tension of the past weeks begin to ease. The sense of community here was strong, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he belonged somewhere. The next morning, Mark met with Maria to discuss their options. They sat in her office, a small but bright room filled with colorful posters and inspirational quotes. Maria had a stack of paperwork in front of her, but she focused entirely on Mark as he spoke. I've been looking for work, but it's hard when you don't have a stable address or childcare, Mark explained. I'm willing to do anything to support Lily, but I feel like I'm always hitting a wall. Maria nodded sympathetically. I understand, Mark. Finding stable housing is the first step, and from there, we can work on other things. There are a few programs that can help you with job training and placement. Also, we can arrange for childcare for Lily while you're working. Mark felt a flicker of hope. That would be amazing. I just want to give Lily a better life. We'll do everything we can to help you achieve that, Maria assured him. I'll set up a meeting with a job counselor for you. In the meantime, take advantage of the resources here. You're not alone in this. Mark left the meeting feeling more optimistic than he had in months. He spent the next few days getting to know the shelter's routines and participating in activities with Lily. They attended a community garden project, where Lily delighted in planting flowers and vegetables, her laughter a balm to Mark's weary soul. One afternoon, as Mark watched Lily play with the other children, Maria approached him with a thoughtful expression. Mark, I've been thinking about your situation. There's a program run by a local nonprofit that focuses on helping single parents get back on their feet. They offer temporary housing and job placement services. I think it could be a good fit for you. Mark listened intently, hope rising within him. That sounds perfect. How do I apply? I've already spoken to them about your case, Maria said with a smile. They're willing to meet with you tomorrow. I'll go with you to the meeting and help with the application process. The next day, Mark and Maria visited the nonprofit's office. It was a bustling place, filled with people dedicated to making a difference. They met with a caseworker named Jenna, who explained the program in detail. We provide temporary housing for up to 6 months while you get on your feet, Jenna said. We'll also help you find a job that suits your skills and arrange for childcare for Lily. Our goal is to help you achieve long-term stability. Mark felt tears of gratitude welling up. Thank you, Jenna. This is more than I could have hoped for. Jenna smiled. We're here to help, Mark. Let's get started on the paperwork. As they filled out the forms, Mark felt a sense of determination. This was the break he had been praying for, a chance to rebuild his life and provide a stable future for Lily. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but with the support of people like Maria and Jenna, he felt ready to face the challenges ahead. Back at the shelter, Mark shared the good news with Lily. Her eyes lit up with excitement. Daddy, does this mean we'll have a new home? Yes, sweetheart, Mark said, hugging her tightly. We're going to have a new home, and things are going to get better. I promise. That night, as Lily slept soundly beside him, Mark lay awake, thinking about the journey ahead. He knew there would be obstacles, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of purpose and hope. He thought about Officer Ramirez and the kindness he had shown, and how it had set off a chain of events that led them here. Mark vowed to pay that kindness forward, to help others in need whenever he could. He had seen the worst of people's judgment and the best of their compassion, and he wanted to be part of the solution, to make the world a little better for those who were struggling. As he drifted off to sleep, Mark felt a peace he hadn't known in years. He knew there was still a long road ahead, but with Lily by his side and the support of a caring community, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The following morning dawned bright and clear, a hopeful contrast to the past few weeks of gloom. Mark and Lily prepared to leave the shelter for their meeting with the nonprofit. As they waited for Maria in the lounge, the other residents wished them luck, their encouraging words bolstering Mark's spirits. Maria arrived promptly, her presence as reassuring as ever. Ready to go, Mark? She asked with a warm smile. Mark nodded, holding Lily's hand. Yes, we're ready. They took a bus across town, the journey filled with a mix of nervous anticipation and hopeful excitement. As they approached the nonprofit's building, Mark couldn't help but marvel at the hustle and bustle of the city, a stark contrast to the isolation he had felt in recent months. Inside the nonprofit's office, they were greeted by Jenna, the caseworker they had met before. Good to see you again, Mark, she said warmly. And this must be Lily. Hi, Lily. Lily gave a shy wave, clutching her father's hand tightly. Come on in, we'll get started right away, Jenna said, leading them to a small conference room. They spent the next few hours discussing Mark's skills, his work history, and his goals. Jenna listened attentively, taking notes and offering insights. She explained the various resources available to him, including job training programs and support services for Lily. "Mark, you have a lot of valuable skills," Jenna said, reviewing his paperwork. "With some additional training, I believe we can find you a stable job fairly quickly. We'll also set up childcare for Lily during your work hours." Mark felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you, Jenna. This means so much to us." "We're here to help," she replied. "I'll schedule your first training session for next week. In the meantime, you can move into the temporary housing we discussed." Jenna handed him a set of keys and a welcome packet. "Here's everything you need to get started. The apartment is small but fully furnished. It's a fresh start." As they left the nonprofit's office, Mark felt a renewed sense of purpose. They took another bus to their new apartment, a modest but clean space in a well-maintained building. As they stepped inside, Lily's eyes widened with wonder. "Daddy, is this our new home?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. "Yes, sweetie," Mark replied, lifting her up and spinning her around. "This is our new home." They spent the rest of the day settling in, exploring their new surroundings, and unpacking the few belongings they had. That evening, as they sat down to their first meal in their new home, Mark felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and hope. Meanwhile, back at the pharmacy, Mr. Thompson couldn't shake the memory of Mark and Lily from his mind. The encounter had stirred something in him, a realization that he had been too quick to judge and too slow to help. He thought about Officer Ramirez's words, about compassion and responsibility. Determined to make amends, Mr. Thompson decided to reach out to the community in a new way. He began by setting up a small fund to provide basic medical supplies to those in need, no questions asked. He posted signs in the store and around the neighborhood, letting people know that help was available. Word spread quickly, and within days, people began coming to the pharmacy, not just for medicine but also for a kind word or a bit of advice. Mr. Thompson found himself listening more, learning about the struggles and triumphs of his customers. The experience humbled him, and he realized how much he had taken for granted. One evening, as Mr. Thompson was closing up the pharmacy, he saw Officer Ramirez standing outside, talking to a small group of people. Curious, he stepped outside and approached the officer. "Evening, Officer Ramirez," Mr. Thompson greeted. "Good evening, Mr. Thompson," the officer replied, turning to face him. "How are things going here?" Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Better, I think. I've started a small fund to help those in need of basic medical supplies. It's been eye-opening." Officer Ramirez smiled approvingly. "That's good to hear. It's never too late to start making a difference." Mr. Thompson nodded, glancing at the people gathered around. "I've been thinking a lot about that day with Mark and his daughter. I've realized how quick I was to judge, and how wrong I was." "You're not the only one," Officer Ramirez said gently. "We all have our moments of weakness. What matters is how we respond to them." As they spoke, Mark and Lily approached the pharmacy. Mark had a look of determination on his face, and Lily clutched a small drawing in her hand. When Mr. Thompson saw them, he felt a pang of guilt and regret. "Mark," he called out, stepping forward. "It's good to see you. How are you and Lily doing?" Mark smiled, a genuine warmth in his expression. "We're doing much better, thanks to the help we've received. I wanted to come by and thank you, Mr. Thompson. And Officer Ramirez, thank you again for everything." Lily stepped forward, holding out her drawing to Mr. Thompson. "This is for you," she said shyly. Mr. Thompson took the drawing, his eyes misting over as he saw the colorful picture of a smiling sun and flowers. "Thank you, Lily. This is beautiful. We wanted to let you know that things are looking up for us," Mark said. "I've started job training, and we have a place to stay. I couldn't have done it without the support we've received." Mr. Thompson felt a lump in his throat. "I'm so glad to hear that, Mark. I've been trying to make things right here, helping others who might be in need like you were." Mark's expression softened. "That's good to hear. It's never too late to make a difference, Mr. Thompson." Officer Ramirez placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "You've come a long way, Mark. I'm proud of you." As they stood together, a sense of community and shared purpose filled the air. The harsh judgments and misunderstandings of the past were giving way to compassion and understanding. Over the next few weeks, Mark threw himself into his job training with determination and focus. The nonprofit provided him with the tools and support he needed to succeed, and he quickly found a job as a maintenance worker at a local school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it provided a stable income. Lily thrived in the supportive environment of the shelter and the new daycare she attended. Her health improved, and her cheerful spirit returned. She made friends easily, her laughter a constant source of joy for Mark. One evening, after a long day at work, Mark sat with Lily on the steps of their temporary apartment. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. Lily rested her head on her father's shoulder, and Mark felt a deep sense of peace. "Daddy, are we going to stay here forever?" Lily asked, her voice soft. "No, sweetie," Mark replied, kissing the top of her head. "This is just a step on our journey. We're going to find a place of our own soon. A real home." Lily smiled, her eyes filled with trust and love. "I know we will. Because we have each other." Mark hugged her tightly, feeling a swell of emotion. "Yes, we do. And that's what matters most." As the months passed, Mark saved diligently, determined to secure a permanent home for him and Lily. With the help of the nonprofit and the steady income from his job, he managed to find a small apartment in a safe neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. The day they moved in was one of the happiest in Mark's life. He and Lily spent hours unpacking and arranging their belongings, making the space their own. That evening, they sat together on their new couch, a simple but meaningful symbol of their journey. "Daddy, this place is perfect," Lily said, snuggling close to him. "It is," Mark agreed, his heart full. "It really is." Back at the pharmacy, Mr. Thompson continued his efforts to support the community. He partnered with local organizations to expand the fund, providing not only medical supplies but also basic necessities like food and clothing. The pharmacy became a hub of support and compassion, a place where people could find help and hope. One day, Mark stopped by the pharmacy with Lily, wanting to thank Mr. Thompson for his continued efforts. As they entered, they saw the manager helping an elderly woman select her medications, his demeanor kind and patient. When Mr. Thompson saw them, he smiled warmly. "Mark, Lily. It's good to see you both. How have you been?" Mark shook Mr. Thompson's hand. "We've been doing well, thanks to people like you. I just wanted to stop by and thank you for everything you've done for the community. It's made a real difference." Mr. Thompson's eyes glistened with gratitude. "Thank you, Mark. That means a lot to me. I've learned so much from this experience, and I'm grateful for the chance to make things right." As they chatted, Lily tugged on Mark's sleeve. "Daddy, can we get some flowers for our new home?" Mark smiled down at her. "Of course, sweetie." Mr. Thompson handed Lily a small bouquet of fresh flowers. "Here you go, Lily. These are on the house." Lily's face lit up with joy. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." As they left the pharmacy, Mark felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Their journey had been challenging, but it had also been filled with unexpected kindness and support. He knew there would still be obstacles ahead, but he felt ready to face them, strengthened by the love of his daughter and the compassion of those who had helped them along the way. That evening, as the sun set over their new apartment, Mark and Lily sat together, the bouquet of flowers brightening their small kitchen table. They talked about their hopes and dreams, the challenges they had overcome, and the future they were building together. Mark knew that their story was just beginning, and with each new day, they would continue to grow and thrive. And as he held Lily close, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here, and the promise of the bright future that lay ahead.